Good evening, and welcome to the Monday, November 25th meeting of the Radnor Township Board of Commissioners. Will everyone join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I will note that we met in executive session this evening. Just prior to this meeting, myself, Commissioner Farhi, and Commissioner Larkin, where we discussed legal matters and matters of real estate and personnel. Consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda this evening?
I actually have a proposal to add a couple of items to the consent agenda this evening.
Okay.
I would propose adding item 4D, 4E, and 4F to the consent agenda.
Okay. You're making a motion to do that?
Yeah, I move for the amendment to add D, E, and F to the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion about adding those items?
I'm against it. It should be voted on separately.
Okay, we'll take a vote on the amendment. So is there any staff discussion regarding the amendment? Any staff concern? Okay, is there any public comment regarding the amendment that's on the floor to add those items to consent agenda? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of adding items 4D, E, and F to the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes 3-1. So, consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda? Items A through I,
D, E, and F.
and now includes item D, E, and F. Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
There's no public comment on consent agenda. All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 3-1 for the consent agenda. All right, we will move on to our proclamation. So if I could have the representatives from Help Hope Live, please join me. How are you?
Okay.
How are you? Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Sure. All right, so the group, the representatives from Help Hope Live, approached us and asked us if we would be willing to make up a proclamation around Giving Tuesday. For those of you who are involved in nonprofits, which I am, so sorry, I'm a little bit going to be competition for you guys on Giving Tuesday. But Giving Tuesday is the answer to Black Friday and Cyber Monday, where it is take all your savings that you've gotten on Black Friday and Cyber Monday and give back. So it's a philanthropic opportunity, and we hope that everyone will participate in some way with a nonprofit that is looking to raise funds on Giving Tuesday. So I will go ahead and read the proclamation, and then I'll ask you guys to talk a little bit about your fund. You guys are located here in Radnor, correct? So, and then we will move on. But the proclamation deals with all nonprofits for Giving Tuesday. So whereas the organization Help Hope Live, a nonprofit organization that helps people fundraise to pay for medical expenses that are not covered by insurance, they have been in business 36 years, are located in Radnor. And whereas Giving Tuesday began as a response to the commercialization and consumerism of the post-Thanksgiving Black Friday shopping, the premise of Giving Tuesday that it is a day for anyone, anywhere, to give to the nonprofit of their choice. And whereas on this day, millions of people around the world support causes and communities they believe in or live near, in 2018, Giving Tuesday raised $400 million and elicited 14 billion social media posts. And whereas Wells Fargo of Pennsylvania, locally Radnor, has pledged to be a partner in Hope by covering the credit card fee for all online donations made to Help Hope Live on Giving Tuesday. Now, therefore, the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township proclaim Giving Tuesday in Radnor Township on December 3rd, 2019, and encourage residents and business owners of Radnor to participate in this globally recognized day of giving by supporting local charities like Help Hope Live. Hashtag Give Local, hashtag Giving Tuesday. All right, so we'll give this to you. This is for all of you. Proclamation. You want to do a picture?
Gather around.
Oops.
Come around. Oh, there she is. I know, she should be in there. She should.
All right.
Thank
And if
you.
you'd like to say a few words.
Sure.
Thank you so much for this recognition and during this to kick off the charitable giving season that is upon us. We have been here providing the service for 36 years, making sure those who have out-of-pocket medical expenses can get what they so desperately need and deserve. We're living in a time where there are high copays and high deductibles, and there are needs for people who need organ transplants or have spinal cord injuries or catastrophic illnesses. We are that gap coverage that is desperately needed. Until our healthcare system figures out a way to solve the crisis, we'll be here to make sure that people have access to what they so desperately need and deserve that is life-sustaining. So thank you very much for this recognition. We are right here in your backyard, and we are so grateful for this. Thank you.
I know we're not.
No,
well,
I'm
you
in the
know.
same nail polish.
Then we're definitely not competing. Okay, and we have many nonprofits here in Radnor that will be fundraising on Giving Tuesday. So certainly our libraries and our nonprofit education foundation and the ABC House. So many nonprofits. So take your savings and spend it wisely. And I would like to cede the microphone to Mr. Zinkowski. You have something you'd like to present.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Commissioners. ICMA is a recognized organization that is set for, it's the International City and County Managers Association, which provides a lot of support, a lot of information to managers across the country and in Canada, across the world. It's recognition of the profession, and when ICMA has the opportunity to recognize somebody for their years of service, they do. And at this time, Bill White, I'd ask if you can step up here. And Bill, this is in honor of your 20 years of service to local government by ICMA at their 105th ICM Annual Conference in Nashville, Tennessee on October 23rd, 2019. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I'm just going to take this and pass along my thanks to Mr. Zinkowski for the opportunity to work with him for most of these years, and also thank this Board of Commissioners for the opportunity to serve Radnor. My wife and kids, we're here in Radnor. We love the town. Our kids go to these schools, and I can't imagine any better place to be. So here's to 20 more. I appreciate it.
Congratulations, Bill. We are very lucky to have you and your talents and your services, and we are grateful. So, sure, Commissioner Farhi, go ahead.
Thanks. So just a quick reminder, the Garrett Hill tree lighting will be at 5:30 on Sunday at Clemacrone Park. So please bring your ornament, and hopefully there'll be some hot chocolate at all seasons. And it's a fun time. Everyone's welcome, not those that live in Garrett Hill. Also, Saturday, November 30th, we have the Santa. You drop the gift off for Santa. And Santa will be delivering it on a fire truck on the 14th. So those are just some fun things for the family, and hopefully you'll all be involved.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Farhi, and don't forget about the Wayne Business Association's Tree lighting, that's on December 6th, yes. But we won't have a meeting before then, so. All right, great. Lots of good stuff going on. Public participation. So I'd like to invite anyone from the public to come up and make public comment, please. Good evening.
I didn't know you allowed people to start working for the township at 12. My name is Ruth Mooney, and I'm a resident of Radnor Township, and I'm here on behalf of the Green Team, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the proposal for renewable energy and conservation planning services. Last week, there was, I felt, a very incomplete representation of what these planning services will provide. It's a 5-step process, and so step 1 is the current status assessment. And so this is aimed at assessing the energy use landscape and an overview of the regulatory energy framework. And then the planners will meet with the Green Team. Step 2 is the stakeholder focus groups to determine key energy stakeholders in the community, conduct stakeholder meetings, and then provide the Green Team with a full summary of focus group findings and recommendations. Step 3 will be outlining key energy conservation and energy efficiency approaches. So they will identify energy conservation and efficiency strategies by municipal and categorized stakeholders to include energy assessments and recommendations for municipal facilities, but not limited to municipal facilities. They will project the ROI for each strategy, including financial incentives available for each strategy. They will include information on grants to apply for, but applying for grants would actually be part of a subsequent process. They will assess the viability of achieving each strategy, prioritize the list of strategies, and review the strategies with the Green Team, focus group, and township officials. Those last 3 pieces will be part of each of the subsequent steps. So step 4 would be to identify key local renewable energy generation and energy storage opportunities. They would identify local renewable energy generation and storage strategies, project the ROI for each strategy, assess viability of achieving each strategy, prioritize the list of strategies, and again, review the strategies with the Green Team, focus groups, and township officials. And step 5 is to develop educational and outreach materials. So there will be a combined, prioritized list of strategies, and this will be combined into a draft plan that will include phased implementation. They will review the draft with the Green Team, focus groups, and township officials. And then they will present the final plan and educational materials to the Board of Commissioners. And this will take place over a period of 3 months. So we see this very much as laying the groundwork for our work in renewable energy and conservation for the township. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Any other public comment this evening? Good evening, Dr. Winters.
Good evening, Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road in Rosemont, and I would just like to raise a couple of questions about a couple of the stormwater waiver requests. And one of the things I worked on with some students this summer, which I thought was very interesting, is the use of rain gardens, which are very valuable in terms of providing an alternative for stormwater when we don't have other opportunities to deal with the situation. One of the things I learned with the help of my students is that stormwater in rain gardens does not work over the long haul unless the rain gardens are maintained. And I think it's important that perhaps through channels or subcommittees or your engineers, that you might think about developing some ordinances to provide for maintenance of rain gardens. I know our staff is limited in terms of inspection and so forth, but unless the stormwaters are adequately maintained, they do not fulfill their useful function over time. And given that stormwater is not going to go away, I think it's something that we really need to seriously consider in the months ahead. The other question I have is in regard to the item which is in regard to Ordinance 20915, the introduction to look at C3 service commercial districts and provide regulations thereof. One of the items that was not mentioned when it was brought before the zoning, I believe, was that there was also a C3 district in Garrett Hill. And that was not noted because it's in the overlay district, and they had only noted 2 other C3 districts in Radnor Township. And given our situation in Garrett Hill, I think we want to make sure we're not doing spot zoning in one place that'll affect places elsewhere. And I did speak to Mr. Coniglia after the meeting, and maybe that's been considered, but I don't want to have another problem in Garrett Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winters. And just to let you know, so that item has been pulled. I was going to note that when we started got into the committee reports, but that item has been pulled. Mr. Rice, correct?
That'll be back on the December 9th agenda.
Okay. And is the point that Dr. Winters brought up, is that something that has been considered?
Let me take a look at that. I'm not sure. Yeah, the applicant's here, so I'll talk with Nick and Christie, and then we'll take a look at that to make sure there's not some other C3 district that might be impacted.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie, for waiting.
Hi, good evening. Leslie Morgan, Radnor Township. I want to speak a little bit, rinse and repeat talk about what I did last week because we weren't on live camera. And I'm sorry, I couldn't even find it after it was taped. I could find it from our website, but not on the TV. So I guess a lot of people who read the paper would know that there's an impending, again, successive tax increase. And it appears to be about 9%. Last year was about, I don't know, 5 or 6%. And I've talked over the years about township governance versus school district. It's my opinion, and certainly in other municipalities that I've studied, that townships in wealthy areas don't necessarily need to raise taxes if they want to live within their means. I believe that Radnor Township has been governed in a way that crowds out private participation to a large degree. Why do I think that? Well, there's never been really large giving, money raised, and Lisa, you're a nonprofit, so you know that, the Willows, I'm not sure where it stands, the one big donor doesn't even live here. Ardrossan couldn't raise any money, and then we get a surprise $250 from University of Pennsylvania for a park that doesn't even have parking. So it's very lightly used. But in other municipalities, they structure deals at what I call a tabletop, and it's evened out. So if there's going to be a tax increase, there's a lot of private participation. Because you can't ask the taxpayers to go because a few people come to meetings all the time. I come a lot. That doesn't mean my opinion counts any more than 8,000 or 31,000 residents count. I fully am aware of that. But I like to think that people stop me on the street and say, Leslie, thank you for always trying to speak out for the taxpayers and keep it low, because that's what I've been consistent. I don't think you need this tax increase. I think you don't even have to make hard decisions. You have to make some decisions, and you have to come up with your own ideas. Last week, I came up with 3 or 4. Strangely, you just gave 3 away in the consent agenda, and I wasn't quick enough to come up and speak about that. But 3 waivers probably cost this township $10,000 to $45,000 because people in flood zones or non-perkable zones get a hall pass. People like me who are actively going through a renovation, restoration, and addition, as Steve Norsini told me, my grading permit is ready. I have to spend another $15,000 because I bought in perkable ground. I would always buy in perkable ground. That's something I want to do. You have to pay a little more money usually to get those kinds of land masses. But so you just gave away, excuse me, you guys, Could we reset my clock too? Because, I mean, I would like the attention. Thank you. So I think you gave away $45,000 there, and this is a simple change in your zoning ordinance code that would take 2 days to do. So last week you had all that time to capture this, and you just gave those 3 houses a hall pass. But what do I get? And what does the guy who looks over Wawa get, who just spent like something like $35,000 on his? We all have to spend money because we perk. That's a good thing, okay, that we perk. And people who are adding density in flood zones or non-perkable areas get a hall pass. And Roberta, Dr. Winter is correct. Rain gardens don't work. It's a nice little name, you guys, but, you know, really, no, it doesn't work. So that was one of my comments. And then last week, I also said that we should be very wary about the University of Pennsylvania donation, because I asked around last week, and what I found out is that they've never given before. And that when we were looking for our Drawson money, 0. Willows money, 0. So these are big ticket items. You know, you put $1.8 million towards the Willows, and you know, where was Penn then? Where was Penn in our Drawson when that was a $12 million thing? These are large township initiatives, and they were nowhere. The little tiny park across from the whatever it's called, it's lovely already, and very few people. If we did a traffic count, quote unquote, or a park inventory of how many people visit that park, it would be the lowest in Radnor Township, okay? So it's nice that they want to give $250,000, but I'd like to know why, and I think I found out the reason. The reassessment is coming on 1/1/20, and I want people here, Commissioner Nagel, Commissioner Larkin, Commissioner Borowski, especially Borowski, Clark, and Sean, to speak publicly after I come down and tell me that you are not going to not fight for every dollar of reassessment. I spent the last 20 minutes coming up with what I think the reassessed value will be for the township. It's about $800,000 to $900,000. I don't want to be interrupted. Okay? That's township money. I can go through the math, but you probably would crowd me out. If I can have the floor, commissioners. So $800,000 or $900,000 is, I don't know what percent of your budget, but it's a lot. You've got a $1.2 million deficit, okay? And that's between a $5 to $7 million assessed value that we'll get. It's a $300 million project. Anybody could do the simple math. In fact, I'd like to ask Commissioner Farhi, have you done the simple math on 145? The most valuable piece of property that we have in this township, and you are responsible for this assessment. Richard Booker fought very hard for it. Have you guys gone and done the simple math? Because anybody can do it. Has anybody here done the simple math, what it means to us?
Ms. Morgan, you've been here for 6 minutes now.
Right, but I keep getting interrupted, including you. So $800,000 or $900,000, you guys. Is there something going on that your residents deserve to know when I don't get any voice from the podium?
Well, first of all, you don't even understand how reassessment works, because, no, you don't.
Okay, please.
But besides that, your characterization of stormwater as getting a hall pass is a total distortion of the ordinance. The only thing we're giving people a pass on is the infiltration piece. They're still doing it, and Christy's still here. She can tell us how much she's spent on Harvard Lane. So it is not a hall pass, and it is not going to raise the kind of money you suggest.
Okay, thank you. Is there any additional public comment this evening?
It's Ted Merriman, 109 Poplar Avenue. I was curious if there has been any update as to the issue with the bridges at the Radnor and Wayne train stations in regards to oversized vehicles hitting it. It appears that the situation on King of Prussia Road has improved with the signage, but there was another strike today on North Wayne Avenue. Fortunately, the truck was able to remove itself without assistance, but I think that maybe either the township or should maybe either put up signs or talk with PennDOT about putting additional signs up on the North Wayne Avenue bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. There is action on the King of Prussia Bridge. on King of Prussia Road, correct?
Correct, and I think that's a good suggestion, and if the board's okay with that, I'll ask Steve to go ahead and do the signs, because we're the ones that initiated putting the additional signage up. So if the board's okay with that, Steve will go ahead and get those up for the North Wayne Bridge as well.
Okay. Any additional public comment? Hello, Jill. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Can you all hear me okay? I am Jill Fenninger, Ward 31, 512 Askin Road. Yes, Askin Road. And please indulge me in 3 more minutes of my plea. Last week, several of my neighbors spoke about the take-back by the township. But if you recall, I just sat there like a lox, which I regret. I have found my voice and I want to use it tonight. I must admit there's a lot I don't know. Last week you asked me, why is Askin a private road? I have no idea. How long has it been a private road? I don't know. It's been at least 60 years. But here's what I do know. The road is in terrible disrepair, and this is important. It's not in terrible disrepair because of normal wear and tear, but through repeated assaults of many storms over time. I'd like to give you some background to give you context about why I remain hopeful. A while back, maybe a year or 2 ago, neighbor Dan raised the issue with Luke, and Luke was kind enough to come to Askin, walk the street with Dan and Steve to assess the Askin Road condition. In September 2018, Steve sent letters to all the residents asking, and I like this phrasing, asking if we wished or did not wish to have Askin Road dedicated to the township. We all wished. Then, in January of 2019, Bob and Steve met with Askin Road residents right here in this very room. What I remember most from that meeting, apart from the scintillating right-of-way versus easement discussion, and easement is the answer, right? Okay, was this. Bob and Steve explained that while there are many private roads in Radnor Township, Askin was a good choice, at least then, for a take-back. It seemed like they were in favor of it and would recommend it. The next step was to provide our property deeds to Steve, right? Okay, which tested our organizational skills, and the winner was Ted Morse, who has lived on Askin for over 40 years and was the impressive first to get his hands on his deed. Once collected and summarized, Luke would then be able to discuss the take-back with all of you here. I don't know what happened between January and now, but fast forward to last week, November 18th. Luke sent Dan an email with a budget packet attached in case we wanted to make comments, and thank you for that. So we all got to respond. Subsequently, while Luke said we didn't need to come to tonight's meeting since we had already made comments, and I'm going to quote you, Luke, emails to the commissioners would be good. Notice the plural emails. So I sent out a request to all the neighbors, encouraging each of them to write you an email. Lucky for you, they talked me down from that ledge, or you would have gotten 9 emails in each of your mailboxes. Several neighbors suggested instead one email coming from all of us with one united message, which you all have received by now, I hope, and read. Well, just as they say, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. Imagine trying to craft one message from some 18 different voices, but we did it. E pluribus unum, from many one. I have here a hard copy of the letter. It represents each of us. It represents all of us. We have all signed it, demonstrating our unity and solidarity in this campaign, for a campaign it is. And I'd like to present that. In closing, water has a funny way of deciding where it wants to go. Askin may be private, but it sits between 2 public roads. During any storm, water flows onto Brookside, a Radnor road, and beyond. That is a simple fact. We are all in
Jill,
Radnor.
you have 1 minute.
Interconnected, our roads are too, which is why we, the residents of Askin Road, strongly encourage you to take back Askin Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Any other public comment this evening? All right. We will move on. Committee reports, as I mentioned earlier, we are pulling item A. That will be on the December 9th agenda. Item B, Resolution 2019-119, authorizing the Township Manager to execute all documents on behalf of Radnor Township related to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation Multimodal Transportation Fund to provide a $3 million grant for the Darby Paoli Multi-Use Trail. Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Madam President. So this is to allow the manager to execute this grant application. It's a $3 million grant request. The township's match is 33%. We already have half of that in our design costs, so the additional would be somewhere in the $500,000 grant amount for our match. We've broken down the trail into 7 segments so that if it so pleases the board, we can build pieces of the trail as opposed to trying to wait to get the entire trail done. So that's basically what this is, to get grant money to get started on the trail. Right now, there's only money to complete design. There is no construction money.
And this doesn't really commit us to anything. This is just the application.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Can I get a motion to approve Resolution 2019-119 for discussion?
Second.
Okay, is there any commissioner discussion with regards to this?
One question, I just want to make real certain that this would not involve, there's no scenario in which we could start building at the Lenore intersection that we've had conversations about, I know, without this coming back to the board.
Different grant.
Then
Different
never
trail.
mind. Sounds like that's a no.
Any other commissioner comment? Any staff comment? Is there any public comment? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of Resolution 2019-119, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-1 with Commissioner Booker and Commissioner Abel absent. 5-0. Did I say 5-1? I'm sorry, 5-0. 5-0. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, item C has been pulled as well, the Radnor Tap Trail discussion, as that is being worked on, and we will have more information on that moving forward. D, E, and F, we are finished. Item G, Resolution 2019-126, 415 Maplewood Drive, approval of planning module. Again, Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Madam President. So this is Mr. Semerjian in the 415 Maplewood subdivision. This is the final step that he needs to get sewer capacity approval for the 8 units for that land development item. It's rather perfunctory in nature. All his downstream requirements have been met. He has all his capacity requirements. This is the final step with DEP.
All right, can I get a motion to introduce or to approve Resolution 2019-126?
Second.
All right, any commissioner discussion? Any staff discussion or comment? Any public comment? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of Resolution 2019-126, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Booker and Commissioner Abel absent. Resolution 2019-111, authorizing distribution of funds from the Stormwater Fund. Commissioner Larkin with Mr. McNellis.
Yeah, so this is something that I had introduced a little while ago, and there were questions, and I think Sean wanted to ask of Mr. McNellis. To very briefly reiterate, this is the concept that we would be able to install tree trenches throughout the township, but in the stormwater affected areas, using our own personnel. It would save substantially in a number of different ways. Number one, it would mean that we're not going out to bid and paying prevailing wage. Number two, would mean that we don't have to pay for complex engineering because we have the expertise on hand to just say, I want you to dig in the following areas and install the tree trenches as you know how. And then also we would be able to do it a whole lot faster because we don't have to go through the process of, again, bidding and getting approval from everybody. We could just say, the board will approve the following sites, and you guys go out and make it happen in the same way that we do a lot of other construction work in the township. So beyond that, the actual construction engineering details are those two. So I know there were questions before.
So before we discuss, ask questions, can I get a motion to approve 2019-111?
So moved.
All right. Any commissioner discussion on this?
Just a couple questions. So, Steve McNellis, would this affect the quality of service? We're going to have to move some of your staff around? And how long would we expect this project to take? Can you do it over the winter? Can you just kind of briefly
It would have
explain
to be in the spring. And the scope of the project we discussed would probably just take a week, the first one. You know, all the scopes might be different. I can't give you a timeline on all of them because we haven't laid any others out. But the pilot one, Steve went over it with me. It's something we can do in-house. And I wouldn't guarantee getting all 7 of them done in one season, but we could definitely get started, and we'll do the best we can.
And I guess we have all the necessary equipment to do so.
Yes, yeah,
correct?
backhoe, stone, whatever materials we need, we can get. Yes.
And what do you estimate the cost savings would be?
So the cost savings based on the budget, it's about a 65% cost savings. So as opposed to $100,000 plus, it's in the $20,000, $35,000 range.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question around the impact of these. I think it's great, and I'm just, so this seems right now it's limited to the property on the northeast corner of Willow and Radnor Road, just that one location. But if we find this is something that's effective, and is it something that could be utilized in other places around the township? So this is kind of like a little bit of a test case, and then we would authorize it on an as-needed basis?
It's not limited to just that area. It's, Commissioner Larkin said it could be used in any area in the township.
This particular resolution is limited to that area. It's authorizing $40,000 to get started for that reason. But yeah, future resolutions, I think the concept isn't that you guys just go out and start willy-nilly putting in tree trenches at your whim, which I would love. It just seems like we probably would have to do a resolution for each one.
Is it something that would be built into this, if we need to authorize the release of the funds from the stormwater, could we, if it's proved successful, would we incorporate it into the stormwater ordinance?
I don't think you'd have to include it into the stormwater ordinance. It could be done by resolution, just like we're doing tonight for specific locations, and I can provide different locations in different areas to the commissioners at one point, and as funding and/or Steve and Public Works time come available, we could attack them in that fashion.
Any other comment? Is there any staff comment? All right, any public comment to ordinance 2019-111? Right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of 2019-111, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Booker and Commissioner Abel absent. All right, ordinance 2019-12, an introduction, adoption of the final 2020 comprehensive budget by setting the township real estate tax millage rate and adopting appropriations for 2020. I'm going to ask for an introduction, I'm going to ask for a motion to introduce, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I'm going to hand this to Mr. Zinkowski and Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam President. We thank you for, over the past year, of having the meetings, special meetings to go through a lot of these issues here, which we know we can't address overnight. It's going to take time. It'll take a long-term plan. Based on the meetings going back to October of this year, the focus primarily has been on funding the fire companies. The direction from the board last Monday was to draft a budget incorporating the .3770 mils to fund the fire companies exclusively. And that is how we arrived here tonight with this proposed budget. However, during the discussion last Monday night, there were some board members that raised some concerns about separating the funding for fire and tying the future board's hands, as well as the size of the increase, with some concerns over the percentage. Therefore, and upon some further reflection on this item, would it be more acceptable to the board if we shifted our focus away from funding fire exclusively with dedicated millage and looking at funding the full operating budget that includes the fire companies, just enough to meet the township's cash balance policy? If we did that, the necessary millage adjustment would be down to 0.25 mils only. Bill?
Thank you. Yeah, Ian, if we could switch over to the laptop, please. And this is something that we're working on live, so I apologize. It's going to be spreadsheets and maybe a little difficult, but I'll zoom in where I can. This is the operating statement for the general fund for 18-19 projected, and we've added a column to reflect what the manager has just proposed with the smaller millage increase. And as he pointed out, shifting the focus away from funding fire entirely, which was the $1.2 million, which equates to 0.377 mils. If we just aimed at keeping the township's ending fund balance in the general fund at policy level, which is 25%, and that 25% is made up of two components. The base fund balance policy is 15% of expenditures, and then given the volatility of one of our largest revenue sources, which is the business taxes, the board at the time included an extra 10% to excuse me, to mitigate years when there could be a large fluctuation in that revenue. And it's something, if you look back through the township's historical revenues, happened. From 2008 to 2009, the business taxes decreased by $4 million in 1 year. And so the increased fund balance at 25% seemed to make sense to give the township more time from an event like that to making the long-term decisions for correction. Either give the business taxes enough time to recover or give the board enough time to come up with a plan to, on how to fix the operating statement moving forward from there. So that's how we arrived at the 25%. So if to nail down or just generate enough revenue to cover all of the operating expenses, which includes the fire company funding as we discussed last Monday, and it also includes the community organization funding as we filled in the blanks during last Monday's meeting. The millage would be 0.25, and we would end 2020 with a shade over 25% in the cash balance and be compliant with the policy.
So just a quick question on the community groups. We talked about freezing them at the 2019 level. Is that what this represents?
Yes, but at the same time, including the ones that the board instructed us to include with the Ready for 100 and the women's resource.
Mm-hmm. Is there any commissioner discussion on this?
Two different things. I want to make sure that I've got the math right. You're talking about a total millage rate of about 4.407-ish? Sure. 4.407-ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 4.4082 if it's exactly 0.25.
Okay. And then the other thing is I'd like to ask the commissioners just to consider, we are, in order to do this, I know, going to be shaving some areas of the township budget. I'd like to go back and maybe reconsider the $15,000 that we're giving to the Historical Society, move them down to 10, which is not an enormous change. They should be able to do the things that they told us they wanted to do with that, with the exception of the wagon for the parade, which has been presented as a luxury. So I know that we're not voting on that in particular. I'm just interested in seeing if there's a consensus on that.
And there were areas you found some cost savings, Bill?
Well, as we've done since September, when we put our first round of numbers together, it's almost a daily review of all of the operating budgets as new information becomes available. we continue to work those numbers down. So there have been a few line item changes. Again, if it was anything significant, I'd report on it, but we're at the point now where we're covering our known costs, but not a whole lot of wiggle room for variances or things that are unpredictable in nature. So, for example, the salt budget is one of my favorites. Just ask our Steves over there. We budget $200,000. If we have a good winter, we don't spend it, and it's a positive variance. If it's a bad winter, which, looking back over the last 4 years, 3 of those years exceeded that amount, that's an example of one where we're gonna buy the salt because there's a job to do and we have to keep the roads safe. We're not going to slow the program down because of the budget. So in situations like that, it makes more sense to budget on the higher side at 200,000 versus on paper we could knock that down to 100,000 and it'll help this presentation and this discussion out. But in reality, when the snow starts flying, we're that much closer to a negative variance. And then when you do that enough times throughout the budget with repair and maintenance, operating supplies for necessary items in the field maintenance and the various parks and athletic fields we have throughout town, and so on and so on. If you do that enough times and you start building up negative variances, then the budget's shot and you end up dipping into your reserves unplanned. So that's what we're doing on a regular basis when we're putting this budget together, is going through and seeing if new information is available to bring those numbers down a little bit. And we've been able to do that in a number of cases, and those are all reflected here. But again, it's not anything that's going to move the needle significantly at this point, unless we start making larger programmatic type decisions on operations.
I also noticed, and I'm not arguing that we should change the number either of the millage rate increase or what we have projected in the budget right now, but I do kind of want to bring it up as a PSA. You've budgeted, well, no, not you've budgeted. In 2017, we realized about $8.6 million in revenue from the business privilege tax. That went down to 7.9 in 2018, and you're projecting 7.1 through the end of 2019. But in our projections for 2020, we're hoping that we'll get $8 million again in business privilege tax, which means that that's not the same as what we got this year, it's bucking trend for the past 2 or 3 years. I know that there's some anticipation that goes into that built around a new player who's coming into the township, so that makes some sense. But it is bucking trend by a pretty sizable dollar figure, so I'm urging people, you've got shopping to do for the holiday season, go buy stuff locally.
Madam President, if I may just add, this does include the $250,000 request by the Radnor Fire Company. So in the lower millage, it does include that, what their request is.
Yeah, so that's fully funding them at their ask amount. Go ahead.
So I'm still fairly confused. So what's the new millage now? And that's because you pulled fire out, or are you putting fire back in?
So the change in the millage is, the focus before was what millage rate would be necessary to generate enough revenue to fund fire by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the 3.77 mils. So instead, we've pulled fire back into the general fund,
Mm-hmm.
aggregated it with all the other activity, and determined what would be necessary to simply meet the cash balance number. Now, keep in mind that as budgeted or as presented right now, there'd be roughly a $260,000 deficit budgeted for 2020 with the lower millage rate, but we weren't aiming for break even there. We were aiming for 25% in cash. So those are the primary moving pieces between last Monday and tonight.
Okay. So we like to talk in millage, but I think the people at home would like to talk in tax increase percentage. So a .377 millage is what percent?
It's
Of an
roughly
increase.
6%.
So we're going from, where were we at, like around a 10, a 9? So we're able to lower it approximately 3%, or 33%.
True. And I don't want to make light of the percent or the arithmetic around it. And I feel a little bit more comfortable saying it because I paid this too. But our millage, being what it is, it takes a very little change in millage to generate a large percentage because the base number is so low. So we did a quick math calculation earlier today. One of the other two taxing entities that Radnor residents pay on adjusted their rate by 3% a year ago, which costs the median taxpayer a little less than $200 per year. Our 9%, as initially proposed, would have cost that same taxpayer around $100. So for half as much, our 9% equates to half as much of an increase as a 3% on the other. So again, this is just math, but I feel like sometimes we get locked in on a percentage, and it does seem big. I mean, 9% is going to cause a negative immediate reaction. There's no doubt about it. 6% probably isn't going to make people feel real good. But at the end of the day, the dollar increase to the median taxpayer is going to be roughly $60 to $65 for the year.
It's about $5 a month.
Yes.
I mean, I can stomach $5 a month to live in Radnor.
So I
Both
just want,
houses.
I'm sorry, you guys done? I'm sorry. John. So I just wanted to make clear, so this, so we still need to have the discussions around, this doesn't include any of the capital. So the only capital projects that we currently will be doing are the ones that we've already, we took the bond out for. So that's what we'll be doing, finishing all that up next year. This does not include any new capital. So our friends on Askin Road who've come, this does not include anything like that at this moment. Those are future discussions we'll be having over the next year and can continue to address, similar to what we did this past year. We took a bunch of projects off that capital list and were able to determine a way that we could fund those. So this is just funding our community groups, our fire, and the township budget, and I think I said it last week, funding all of our operating, what exactly we need to pick up the trash, what else? All the other things that we do. Plow the snow, repair,
Maintain the fields,
Maintain
pick
the
up the leaves,
fields,
plow the
all that
snow,
stuff.
fix the roads, the curbs, the sidewalks, the trees.
I am completely
And
underestimating
provide
what all is done.
24/7
but
police access, or police response.
Police force, yes.
As well as help our fire companies do their thing.
And so also all of the presentations that people may have heard when the night that we did the community groups and we also did the staff who all came, all of that stuff is also still up for consideration. None of that is included in this budget.
Yes, for the township operations, for each of the departments, it's at today's level. We do have a couple vacancies that we have budgeted to refill, but no new positions, no additional headcount.
Okay.
And sorry, I had a point on a comment, the capital, sorry. You are absolutely correct with regard to general capital, but with regard to sanitary, there are a couple projects, including the big one with the Skunk Hollow trunk line that is moving forward, and there is some funding left from the 18 borrowing in case we run into trouble there. But we should hold that for reserves in case a pipe breaks. Stormwater, and we'll get into these when we have the special discussions, but there could be opportunities depending on how quickly the board wants to move on securing funding and getting going with projects in 2020. assuming that we do some sort of financing on those and then use the fee to pay for it, the stormwater fee.
So that is all still to come. That's not off the table. Certainly the capital's not off the table, but for right now in this budget, none of that is in there. Okay. Is there any other commissioner comment? Is there any staff comment to ordinance 2019-12? Is there any public comment?
Leslie Morgan about the budget. Bill, just one question on debt service line item, and could you scroll down so I can see the years on the top of the header, but I believe it's, so that's 2020. Okay, so right now we didn't draw on the bond as quickly, and that was 2.2, and then it jumps up to 800,000 because it was $8 million, and that, is that principal and interest on the 8 million? You see the line?
Yeah, I see. I'm hesitating because, is this a back and forth, or do you want to just lay your questions out and I can address them when you're done? Yeah, this one's a simple one. So yes, that number represents the general funds portion of the debt service. The reason why there's a dip in 19 is because there's been accumulating fund balance in the debt service fund, and that's transfers made over years and years and years. So what we want to do is we want to clean that fund up, utilize those dollars to pay 19's obligations, and then 2020 gets back to normal. So if we didn't have fund balance in the debt service fund in 19, that 2.2 would be closer to 3 million.
Gotcha. You know, obviously, we had about 6% last year, and we're having 6% this year. And the township budget is a smaller dollar amount, Commissioner Farhi, because the township is at about $30 to $35 million in its budget per year, and the school district's at about 100 and plus. And that's pretty normal in terms of the township budget would be smaller. But, you know, the school district is raising taxes. I would assume that the county will go on a mad stampede of raising taxes. And so we are also faced with a reassessment this year of all houses and buildings. So there's going to be a lot of change in the tax numbers and the fee numbers. And, you know, that's a cumulative effect on the residents. And so when you say it's just $5 a month, you know, if I look back over like 10 years, mine's thousands of dollars more, okay? So it's meaningful money. And I, again, ask each of you to come up with your own ideas, besides Bill White, who is very, very good. Thank you again for your service, Bill. You're great. And Bill could probably give you some more ideas on how to get there. I think another thing that I might add today is that, and I've said this a few times, is that about 8 years ago, there was a marketing survey done to all your residents. And again, people like me who come and are very knowledgeable about municipal finance or any finance, you know, it's easy for us. But there's 31,000 people here. I forget, 8,000 homes or taxable entities. And some care and some don't. They care when they write their check, I guess, and then they don't care, 11 months afterwards. But what I would say to you is, why don't we get a survey? Because I was really shocked the last survey, and they rank ordered what your residents wanted, what the collection of your residents, not even your voters, all the residents, your taxpayers. And I was really surprised to see that the top 3, I remember the last survey, were all about being very fiscally prudent. They wanted no tax increases. And so why don't you ask the residents, not just people like me, who come with maybe some ideas that are taken or not taken, and see what your residents and your taxpayers want. I would think that they don't want much money going towards special groups all the time, unless there's also private participation, things like that. But why don't you go out to the public? It's been 8 or 9 years. I think it's time. I think you need to hear from your public. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. That's a good suggestion. Is there any other public comment this evening on ordinance 2019-12? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Madam President. Sorry. We will need to amend the ordinance first, because the ordinance as presented right now has the higher millage. So we need to amend that down and then move forward.
So right now it says the total tax levy would be 4.5352 mils. So we need to amend that down to, what was it, 4.4? I wrote,
4.407692.
I have, 4.4082.
yeah, I wrote down 8.2 also.
And we would eliminate the line item in the ordinance that pulls fire out. It would just be operating in debt.
Okay, so I need an amendment. What's that? You've moved?
Yeah,
Okay.
second.
Second. All right, so there's there's the motion on the floor to amend 2019-12 and pull out, so we'll be taking out the fire company tax levy, and the total tax levy reduced for 2020 will be 4.4082. Are we in agreement on that? Yes? 4.4082.
Aren't we at 4.1582 right now?
$4.1582 today.
Times 1.06 is 4.407692.
Well, I added 4.1582 plus .25. It's actually 6.01% if we're going out to the hundreds.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so we are in agreement on 4.4082? Yes? Okay. All right, so, to the general budget, and then 4.4082. All right, is there any discussion on the amendment? Any staff comment? Mr. White, you good? Okay, is there any public comment? All right, so I'm taking a vote on the amendment for Resolution 2019-12. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Booker and Commissioner Abel absent. So we will go back and vote now on the amended version of 2019-12. Any additional comment? Any staff comment? Any public comment? All right, all those in favor of amended version of ordinance 2019-12, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Booker and Commissioner Abel absent. All right, moving along. Ordinance 2019-13, introduction, adoption of the 2020 sanitary sewer rate, and I will
All right, I'll take this one. There's not as much to talk about in terms of changes from last Monday. What this ordinance does is it recognizes or incorporates the third year of the third of 3 years of increases that the board at the time voted to incorporate in for the sewer fund. And those increases in each of those years was 10%. So for 2020, and even I'm squinting to try to see this, the sewer rent rate would be 7.85. And again, these, I'm highlighting the numbers on the screen for the folks that it shows that it's an even 10% increase. And this increase in the sewer fund is necessary to fund the township's obligations to the Radnor Haverford RHM Sewer Authority. That's our downstream conveyance, as well as cover the operation of the 3-person crew. And that's it. There's nothing else built into here. There's no additional staff. There's no capital, no new capital. And with the 10%, with the forecasted water consumption, we're basically at break even. There's a positive $6,200 net revenue. But again, even the slightest variance in the water consumption will have a big impact on whether that number is more positive or flips negative.
Okay, can I get a motion to introduce ordinance 2019-13?
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any commissioner discussion on 2019-13? Any staff comment? Is there any public comment? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of ordinance 2019-13, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with Commissioner Booker, Abel, and absent, and Commissioner Nagel off the dais. All right, on to ordinance 2019-14, introduction, adoption of the consolidated fee schedule for the township effective January 1st, 2020. Mr. White? Mr. Zinkowski?
So this ordinance is related to the budget, but indirectly. Actually, there's no visual aids on this one. It's in the packet. This is the last piece of the ordinance-related legislation. We do this on an annual basis, and what Chapter 162 of the Township Code requires that the township consolidate all the fees that are identified throughout the code and brings them all together in one consolidated list. So the fee schedule does that. We adopt it annually by ordinance with the budget. It would be effective January 1st, 2020. And then any amendments we make to those fees throughout 2020 can be done by a resolution. The fee schedule itself was included with the packet. We highlighted any changes in yellow throughout the document. Just real quickly, the bulk of the changes were, there was one in community development relating to a re-inspection fee as a result of a continued trend of inspections or developers not being ready for inspections and our guys having to go out multiple times. So that fee is to help recover some of the costs associated with the scheduling and the visiting the same site over and over again without anything really to inspect. The other adjustment is in the police department as it relates to the parking fees. And there's a couple moving parts there. On a housekeeping basis, there's a chapter in the parking fee chapter of our code. It has a pretty extensive list of fees. Many of those had not been in the fee schedule in the past, and they should have been. So in cleaning that up, we came to the conclusion that having it duplicated in the fee schedule and in ordinance wasn't necessary. So if adopted as written, those parking fees would be incorporated into the fee schedule, and we would no longer need those paragraphs in the code because it's redundant. And as we learned, it's an opportunity to have mismatched fees. So in this case, cleaning that up, it would all be in the fee schedule. So there is a paragraph in the fee schedule ordinance that would allow us to remove those paragraphs from the code, or that section from the code. And then in doing so and looking at those fees, what actually brought us to the error that it had not been included in prior fee schedules is many of those fees were set years and years and years ago and have not been adjusted. So we're proposing some adjustments to those. Again, there are individual violations related to parking, and the police department enforces those, so we can answer any specific questions on that. In most cases, the changes are not overly significant, from maybe a $10 per instance up to 20 or 25. So those are the changes, and that's what this ordinance is intending to do.
Can I get a motion to introduce ordinance 2019-14?
So moved.
Second.
Any commissioner discussion on the consolidated fee schedule? All right, any staff comment? Is there any public comment on the fee schedule? All right. I'd like to thank you, Mr. White, for breaking this out for us and also highlighting all the changes, because it is an extensive document, so I appreciate the fact that you did that.
Absolutely. Well, that was born out of commissioners' requests in the past, so
Okay,
yes.
well, I appreciate it. I will call the vote. All those in favor of ordinance 2019-14, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Booker and Commissioner Abel absent. What? It is only 7:45? Well, we got to kind of figure out something else to do.
That's due to the, 3 hours, 4 hours we put in this week, so.
I know, yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so are there any reports of standing committees of the board? I would just like to report out on two things. The first, I attended the Shade Tree Committee meeting last week, and I just wanted to report that between the fall planting, the spring planting, and some other generous donations that we had from businesses, for instance, Cabrini, the Shade Tree Commission was able to plant 312 trees in 2019. Correct, Mr. Nocini?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, those 312 trees went in, and only 180 trees were removed. And those trees, usually removed because they're hazardous and whatnot. But I just want to commend the work of our Shade Tree Commission. They do a great job, and they are really making a significant impact with the help of Mr. Hosbeck and Ms. Sherwin and Mr. Norsini working well, all working well together. It is a positive trend, I think, for our township. And the other thing I want to report from the library board, the Friends of the Radnor Memorial Library, they do a sale. I think they do a sale maybe twice a year. They were able to, I was at their board meeting last week, and they were able to donate $25,000 to the library. So they're a separate fundraising entity of the Radnor Memorial Library. What's that? That's just the books you gave them. Well, they were sold very well. So I just want to commend the Friends of Radnor Memorial Library and also let everybody know they are looking for board members, people to come on board and help out. So certainly our library is a very integral part of our community. So if there's anyone interested, and this is for the Friends of Radnor Memorial Library, not the library board, but the Friends of Radnor Memorial Library. And they're the ones that run the sales, and they do a lot of other good work for the library. So if anyone is interested, you can go to the website, the library website, and or contact Annie Lapley, who is the director of the library. And also, reminder, the Jingle Run. Sign up for the Jingle Run, which benefits the library, and that is on December 7th. Any other committee?
Community programming, Parks and Rec, Santa's Delivery. The drop-off is Saturday morning, 8 to 11. Get the form in with your presents, so.
All right. Anyone else? All right, is there any new business? Any old business? All right, then I will call for public participation at 10 of 8. Any public participation? Good evening, Dr. Winters.
Roberta Winters, I would just like to commend the board for a budget process that I think was more transparent and involved a greater number of meetings and also more public input, and I think it's made it easier in the long haul. I think it's very difficult because there are areas that you really need to not, to be looking forward to becoming more proactive rather than reactive because of what's happened in the past. So I think it's very prudent that you're working on this in a more proactive way to provide better services to all our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winters. And be prepared. Sounds like we've got a whole lot of meetings next year as well. Yes. Oh. Any other public comment? All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to
So
adjourn
moved.
at 7:50. All those in favor? Aye. Our motion passes 5-0 with Commissioner Booker and Commissioner Abel absent. Oh, my goodness.